Hi everyone, welcome and thank you very much for joining me on this webinar on gamifying your training content to enhance learner engagement in Totara Learn. We still have a few people rocking up, but we've got some good numbers, so we'll make a start. So thank you so much for joining, and for those that are listening in the future, thank you for listening. So today we've got quite a bit of content to go through. A reminder that we are recording this, and all the slides and the recording will be available on the community. So if I am going a little too fast because I'm in a rush to get through everything, you can go back and watch or listen to the recording again. You could probably even slow it down if you need to. I am Meredith Henson, Senior Solutions Consultant here at Totara Learning, based in Brighton in the UK. You might hear some seagulls in the background as a result. I am joined here by Mr. Matthew Lineker, friend and colleague, who's currently waving at the screen, you can't see. Matt is going to be monitoring the chat, making sure that if you have any questions that he'll poke me in the ribs and let me know to answer them. At any point, feel free to post on the chat with any questions, or if you need me to clarify anything. We should also have a little time at the end for any questions, and of course we have chat on the forums in the community for anything ongoing. So today is going to be a mix primarily of my slides, which you'll see the first one up there, but also occasionally I'll be switching out to my local 12 installation just to show you where some bits and pieces are as time allows. Again, if there's anything that you've missed or I go too fast or any questions, just yell out in the chat. I appreciate all questions because it gives me a chance to take a sip of water and take a general breath, so please go nuts in there. So let's get the slides going. So the first question, why gamify? Why is gamification important, and why do people look at it? Well, there's a number of reasons. I've grouped them into three broad categories, all somewhat related. So overall, to improve learner motivation, to get them into the learning material and to be motivated to progress through that learning material, which ultimately then leads on to an increase in engagement. And that's not just necessarily completing the activities, but how well they complete the activities, how well they interact with others on the course, how frequently they go into the course material. And ultimately, we see, as a result, usually an improvement in the overall performance of individuals in those courses. Now, there's a bit of thinking behind gamification. Today's session there'll be a bit of theory, but also some specific applications within Totara Learn. But just to start with a little bit of background around setting up gamification and adding games or a gamified element to any course material. So you've got to ask yourself a few questions when you're setting up gamification. Adding gamification to a learning environment sort of centers around setting learning challenges and rewarding the completion of these challenges. So it's important to think the why, what, how, when, where, who of those challenges. So why are we setting up the challenge? Is it to encourage learners to compete for the best results via a leaderboard? Are you trying to get learners to share, collaborate, or communicate with each other? Are you hoping learners will engage further with the course and the content than they are currently? Are you just trying to make a complex or somewhat dry subject matter or content a little bit more interesting and fun for learners? What is the challenge that you're setting, or the challenges that you're setting? Are users going to be collecting scores or ratings, or earning a badge or certificate or something else? Will there be multiple levels of reward? So if they work to if they achieve in a different way, do they achieve different rewards for that challenge? How are you going to track who completes the challenge is another important thing to consider. Will it be manual or will it be automated? If it's automated, who sets up that automated process? If it's manual, is it sustainable? Is it something that is scalable and that you can maintain if you've got a large number of users progressing through your course? When are you setting the challenge within the course flow or learning journey? Does it make sense where you're adding that gamified element in terms of the course? Does it feel authentic for the learner in that particular activity, topic, or section of the course? Do the challenges that you set connect and provide a journey or narrative throughout the course, or is it very much distinct and standalone? And there's not necessarily right or wrong answers to these questions. They are rhetorical for you to consider when building your course. Where are you setting challenges? Are they scattered throughout the course, or at the start and end of the course? Are you perhaps setting too many challenges and diminishing the value and the interest of those gamified elements? Or perhaps are you not setting enough and you're not really adding gamification to your course, just maybe adding 1 or 2 badges, for example? Who are you setting the challenges for is another important thing to consider. There are lots of different types of learners motivated by different challenges. So it's important to consider creating different gamified elements that appeal to different types of learners. So we have highly competitive learners that might enjoy having a leaderboard or be collecting scores and competing with each other and themselves. Users who like to explore a course on their own terms. Learners who compete with themselves to complete and discover everything, and individuals who enjoy interacting with or helping other learners. I'll go into a little bit more further detail in a later slide around how you might appeal to different types of learners, but that list that I've just gone through is very much just scratching the surface of the different types of challenges. Anyone who's listening today who is a video gamer can probably think of one of their favorite games and how these different elements are rewarded and set and rewarded across that particular video game. It's really no different except for the content within any sort of learning material. Who are you setting the challenges for? I've covered, I'm not going to repeat myself. Last is, and probably the most important question, is it a good idea to add gamification to your course? Is it appropriate for the course content? Tone and context are very important to consider. So would you consider adding gamification for a course that's around spotting cultural insensitivity, or identifying and treating some sort of global pandemic such as coronavirus? Probably not. That's less of a rhetorical question. Right, next slide. Any questions so far, Matt?
Bob was just asking a question about whether or not we'll look at badges and how to set those up. I've given there's a course everyone can have a look at on badges as well, for lots of details on how to set up badges. But
I do touch on them very, very gently. However, there is, at one of the last slides, there is a link to a blog post around badges. In fact, 2 blog posts I've previously written around badges, so getting started and applications within a course context. So that content's already there and available to you under the blog section. So we will cover that off.
And Bobby's asking, will we cover software for implementing gamification?
Kind of. So right at the end, I'll be directing you to one of our extensions that one of our extension partners offer, the MoTrain extension. You can check that out on our website, and that is a specific piece of software that you can plug into Totara and use specifically for gamification. Primarily, our focus today will be when and how to apply gamified elements to Totara and some of the functionality within Totara Learn that you can use to apply gamification.
We also have a webinar on how to make a time trial with Storyline, and I'm going to send that to you. That's like a system simulation, sorry, that we have in the academy. So I'll send that to you, Bobby, as well, just so you can see that webinar later.
Okay. Right, so types of challenge. So I mentioned before that there are different types of challenges that appeal to different groups of users. So it's important to create a variety of challenges and gamified elements across your course so that you can appeal to a broad spectrum, or at least a majority of your learners. And ensure that you're promoting some of the behaviours that you see up on screen. So helping and encouraging engagement, and much linked to that would be participation. And that would be things like number of logins, time spent on course, number of activities completed, use of social activities, involvement in activities, so whether they're submitting, updating, posting, or just viewing content, and maybe the overall percentage of completions. Achievement, so achieving specific grades, scores, scales, or passes. Completion, so completion of a selection of activities as well as the course itself. Exploring the course, so that's kind of a combination of engagement and completions, but you can also look at unlocking certain activities based on the combination of engagement and completion, and using the strict access functionality, which I'll touch on later. And encouraging positive and constructive behaviour, so participating in forums, helping others, generally being a good egg within the learning environment. So this is where we start to get a little bit more specific around Totara. So types of rewards. This is just a short list that I've put together, and I'm sure there's many more. So there's rewarding major accomplishments. So that might be using the certificate module, where you would typically issue a certificate for a higher grade or for completing a particularly difficult or longer task. And this appeals to learners who tend to strive for personal and professional development success, people that push through to complete the course. There's rewarding small achievements, and again, that's typically by badges. So I did mention badges after all. And that's appealing for learners who might require a little encouragement to stay engaged with their learning material, or just everyone because the content is a little drier, maybe more compliance-based, and they just need that little push. There's collecting and displaying of points, and that's mainly appealing to users who like to compete with others and themselves. Providing access to restricted areas or activities tends to appeal to learners who like exploring on their own terms and exploring all parts of the course. And providing restricted access gives them a feeling of exclusivity from the wider group, so they feel that their exploration paid off. There's also including hidden or non-course related activities within a course for learners to discover, and that appeals for individuals who kind of enjoy a sprinkling of fun and excitement, hopefully excitement, but certainly fun, to break up maybe more serious or drier course material. Acknowledging positive and constructive behaviour, I've mentioned this before, and that's for people that appreciate receiving a little recognition for their contributions, even if it's just a higher forum post. And then there's financial incentives and prizes. So that's for learners that really just need that external driver to engage in and complete courses. And that's not always applicable for all organisations or even possible. So that's, I've just added that right at the very bottom quite deliberately. So now into some more practical stuff. Before I jump in, any questions?
No, not really.
It wasn't quite enough time for me to take a sip of tea, I'm afraid. Okay, so getting started. Now, planning isn't essential for your course. I think it's preferable and I recommend it. But there is a seeing how the course evolves and how the items and the learning items that you create within the course work together as you build them out arguably yields more cohesive and authentic results. But having a rough idea of what you're trying to achieve from the outset will definitely speed up the process. So I suggest roughly sketching out a few different learner journeys. So maybe pick the people that like to explore versus the people that like to achieve, and think about their journey through the content and what might appeal to them. Towards the end, you'll test it and retest, and be able to look at how those challenges might apply for different types of learners or learners motivated by different things. Most importantly, cut yourself some slack and allow yourself some times, particularly if this is the first time that you're adding gamification to your course. There is a lot of back and forth. So between both your course and the site level administration. So multiple browser windows are your friend. You might want to have multiple logins. You have one for your site admin, one for student for testing, and your course manager, for example, within a course. there is a bit of bouncing backwards and forwards. So what I suggest to try and reduce that backwards and forwards just a little bit is start off with the site administration. This might be you, this might be you sitting down with the site administrator for your course and working through all of these items. And these are for me, I think the core areas that you might want to start with in terms of site administration, but there will be backwards and forwards. So scales. Under site administration and under grades, there's a section called scales, which allows you to create a completely custom rating system or a scale, which you can apply to a range of different activities. So a good example is within the forums. You can create a custom scale to rate someone's reply to a post or a question. That might be something like not helpful, helpful, super helpful. You could have a points-based scale if you want, so people can give it a rating of 1 to 10 or anything in between. Setting up those scales early means that when you go into your course to create those gamified elements and add those ratings for people to achieve or to collect, they're already there. Badges, again. Uploading badges, it can be at the site level and the course level, but you might want to do some preparation in terms of getting those badges designed. Now, in those 2 blog posts that I mentioned before, there's some ideas about how you can apply badges, and one of the ideas is that you can have a schedule of design for those badges where you have different badges with different shapes, different colors, different icons to represent different levels of achievement, different subjects, for different levels, for example, and getting those designed and getting them ready to either upload at the site level or the course level in advance is some prep work that you need to go through. Certificates. So within Totara Learn, you can create custom certificates. So when you go to build your certificate, you need those custom designs. So the borders and the background images and the logos and the signatures need to be uploaded at the administration area. So getting those all prepared in advance means that you can build those custom certificates once you're into your course. We might also want to get some dynamic audiences set up. The restrict access functionality allows you to restrict or control access to particular content by audience. Remembering those audiences might be based on something like position or organization, but it can also be self-select audiences. You might be able to convince your site administrator, if it's not you, to add some custom profile fields for users to select and for them to opt into particular dynamic audiences, then build a rule for everyone who has selected those or that particular custom user profile field. I also suggest you go into the activity results blocks defaults. That's under administration plugins blocks. The activity results block is a bit of a hidden block, really, but it's what acts as a leaderboard within Totara Learn. And if you go through and set the defaults at the site administration level, it's going to streamline just very slightly, creating and updating those blocks when you start adding them to courses across your course. Event monitoring. So this is a piece of functionality that sits, well, hides pretty much within the administration area. It's under site admin and then server. It's functionality that you need to enable by default. But once you've enabled it, you see this screen that, well, this screenshot that I've got here. And what that allows you to do, and again, there's actually a blog post I've written about ideas to use event monitoring, is to create at the site administration level some different rules for different events that might occur across your site. And then as an individual, you can go into your profile area, into your preferences, and actually subscribe to those rules. So in this example here, if a badge is awarded, and that might be at the course level, you can subscribe to that event monitoring for a particular course, or many courses, so that you get a message that's customized as in the admin area that that badge has been awarded. And maybe that means that you award an individual access to another area of the course, or send them a personalized message, or whatever. There are lots of opportunities to create that gamification using the event monitoring rules. And the last piece of advice is to run some benchmarking on any course that you're going to be adding gamification to. Like the question, is this a good idea? You'll be asking yourself that at some point following the course. So by benchmarking some statistics around engagement and performance and completion before you start adding gamification, and then running it following it, will give you an idea of whether that your attempts are successful and whether students are responding to it. And of course, remember, not all courses will be exactly the same, but remembering, you need a basis to know whether you're being successful in your gamification or not. And those statistics might be average number of activity and course completions, and the ratio of learners who enroll versus those that complete the course, the average course grade, and maybe if you add a feedback activity to the end of the course, you can see what your average results or ratings for the course are, whether people are actually saying, I'm enjoying this a little bit more. Any questions, Matt?
So you don't really have any questions at the moment. There's one question that's quite specific from Bobby. Bobby was asking if anyone uses software such as Unity or Unreal. And they're quite sophisticated gaming software, which I've not encountered personally. I wonder if anyone else in this webinar has also encountered using Unity or Unreal. Our team haven't here, really. Jordan hasn't either. So I think one thing to do is post that in the community, and we can see if other people have used it before. But yeah, if anyone's used VR as well, got a good experience with that, feel free to post into the chat. We can sort of crowdsource the answers.
Wonderful. Thanks, Bobby. You're well into this, aren't you? Okay, so getting into some more specifics around Totara Learn. I went through this process myself, which is where some of this advice is coming from. Things like, be kind to yourself and allow yourself some time, and that there's a lot of backwards and forwards. And the school of hard knocks always teach you the longest and best lessons. So I came up with this order to create gamified elements, just using configuration within Learn. It's not hard and fast that you have to go from 1 to 9 in a specific order, but this is just my recommendation. And things, some of them you can mix up a little bit, but I found this was the easiest process. So add all your activities and resources, including any orphaned activities within your course, just throw them in there. Then you can move them around. Then look at adding activity completion requirements to each of those, and then you can add your content restrictions using the restrict access functionality once those other activities and resources are there, and that you can track completion. Then you can start adding course completion requirements, whether that's activity-based or manually, or a combination of the two. Then look at any role permission changes. Now, roles and permissions and capabilities are a very sophisticated subject, and it's quite difficult to get your head around to start with, but there is an excellent Academy course on assigning users and overriding roles. I'm sure Matt's about to dig out the link and send it through in the chat. But there's a great video which talks about how you can override the default permissions for people like learners, so that in fact maybe they can apply grades or scales to other individuals for certain activities within your course. Creating those badges and certificates that I mentioned before. Create any groups and set any activities to be group-based if you want to run group-based activities. That kind of family or team mentality can be used to stimulate the competitive nature in individuals. So group-based activities is a good way to help stimulate people to use those gamified elements. Then make sure you've got all the blocks that you want. So the activity results blocks, you can have multiple instances of those. They can sit at the course level, they can sit on the activity level. And things like the latest badges block. And then finally, don't forget to add that feedback activity so you can do that post-gamification benchmarking.
Just a quick question on that one, Meredith. If you go back to that slide.
Sure.
So at the top of the slide here, you say add all activities and resources, including orphaned activities. What's an orphaned activity?
Good question. Sorry, I skipped over that. So an orphaned activity And you'll see, well, you won't be able to see because it's all kind of magic and hidden, but the community actually uses orphaned activities to great effect. And what that means is you add an activity in a topic that isn't currently visible. Not that it's hidden, it's just not there. So imagine, if you will, a course which has 5 topics. You add an activity to that 5th topic, and then you reduce the number of visible topics down to 4. That activity still exists in some weird kind of middle ether area, but you can link to it. It's not hidden, so users aren't blocked from accessing it. They just don't know how to access it. It's security through obscurity. So what you can do is, with that link that you've taken before you've reduced the number of blocks in your course, you can create a link to it in your course area, which it might be an image, it might be something that's hidden within another activity to add that gamification. And when they click on it, then they can access that activity like they would normally. However, it's hidden but not hidden. There is a section in the help documentation about orphaned activities, which explains and gives an example of how that works. You'll find, if this is new to you, this might blow your mind. But have a look through the community and academy areas and see how they've created images that are links to other content or courses, and that's using the orphaned activities functionality. So I can't stress the test enough. So test them again, test all those different learning paths that you think you want to support within your course. Have someone else test it. Get the most the greatest pedant in your office to test it and try and break it, and try and cheat your system. Try and move through to the end without completing everything that you want them to complete. And yeah, just test. I can't stress that enough. That will probably take you longer than anything else. The other thing you need to do is set up those automated and manual alert processes. And because providing timely awards and rewards and awards is important as the rewards themselves. So if you're rewarding positive behaviour and then it lapses a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks since the individual helped someone in the forum or was collaborative within a wiki, it's meaningless that you reward them after that fact. It doesn't show that you're engaged either. So getting those alert processes in place is really important. So you can do everything from scheduling a report to run and be emailed to you using the report builder. You may just set a calendar reminder for yourself to go and check the course reports. The recent activity block is really helpful to add to a course, and if you've got a recent activity block, there's a little link at the bottom which says full report, and you can click on that and see a full list of everything that everyone's been up to. And of course there's the event monitoring subscriptions, which once they're set up are really easy to subscribe to as an individual to any course. And then open that course up or enroll the learners and give it a go. So I've mentioned already about benchmarking. So after the course has been run, maybe once or 2 cycles, entirely up to you, I'd run those statistics again to see whether you've got an increase in engagement, whether people are completing the course after enrolling it, whether people are getting better grades or not. Review those feedback responses, so the course evaluation. It might be a matter of a few tweaks to the learner journeys, or it might be that it just doesn't work for this course, and you always have the option to remove those gamified elements. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Anything, Matt?
We don't have any questions at the moment. Just going back to the point about orphaned activities, we did run a whole webinar on orphaned activities. So I've just put the link for that into the chat, just in case anyone wants to go and have a look at how to use this, because it is quite a powerful piece of functionality. And as Meredith says, something we use quite a lot in the academy. So
yeah, I was about to suggest an idea for another webinar, but if it's already been done,
brilliant. We've always had it. Yeah.
Tip to the post. Okay, well, that's good news.
Just one question from Alexander as well. Is it possible to translate SCORM scores and or progress to badges and points?
Yeah. So I guess it depends on how you're tracking it. So the SCORM the SCORM activity will maybe set up to push scores to Totara, and that goes directly into the grades grade book. That can't be translated anyway except for manually. However, if you're tracking things like pass and completion, then you can award a badge based on passing or completing that SCORM activity, based on a passing grade that's sent from the SCORM activity itself.
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
Now, a few more resources for you. We have recently put together a dedicated feature sheet on gamification. Some of this content will be very familiar, and some of the language will be familiar. That's available from our website. There's also the Getting Started with Badges blog, and there's 2 related blog posts. We split it into 2. And there's also that blog post I mentioned about event monitoring. And of course, there's the help documentation on event monitoring if you want to have more of a play with that. Now, there's the MoTrain plugin. I should have said spoiler alert right at the start. So you can access that through our website under extensions. That's provided by our partners at MoTrain. And in fact, Jeff from MoTrain not long ago did a webinar, which you'll see the link to here and within these slides, from nagging to nudging, improve motivation and engagement with your own rewards store. I beg your pardon, sorry Jeff. And that's available to watch at your leisure at another time. Now, I mentioned I went through this kind of at lightning speed. We are putting together a more comprehensive and detailed gamification insight guide. Just a short guide, it'll be just a few pages long. It's been written, it's just a matter of reviewing and designing and getting it all looking nice and reading well. So that's coming soon. And where that's going to be located is in the shiny new gamification and Totara course that the community team have just added to the area, to the community area. So you can access that through the course catalogue. And I think Matt, you're probably about to put a link or something, yep, into the chat. And what that has is the link to Jeff's MoTrain blog post that he wrote, the gamification feature guide. We don't really need that anymore because we're running it now, which is the session, and an example of a leaderboard using this custom gamified element, which our Jordan put together, which is a time trial. We ran a time trial a few weeks ago to win tickets to Learning Technologies. It was extremely well received and some fantastic and incredibly fast responses. And this is an example of another time trial. So if you want to go in there, I believe you can go in and see how fast you can create a dynamic audience. And this is a great example of the activity results block, which has simply been renamed using configuration settings to leaderboard. And once the guide is ready, we'll put it on this page as well. So I managed to get through it. Was there any questions or anything else that has popped up on the chat there, Matt?
A few people have arrived late and they've asked several times if their webinar will be recorded.
It sure will, it sure has. Well, I hope so. Oh, yes, you have. Yep, it has been recorded. You can go back and listen to me saying badges and being confused whether I'm talking about digital awards or small nocturnal beasts to your heart's content. Yeah,
we've got over 50 recordings of webinars now, so yeah, do go and have a look. I'll put a link in a minute for all our webinars on demand, but we always record our webinars. So if you're ever late, don't worry too much.
We're not angry, we're just disappointed. We understand that everyone's busy and you need to maybe come in late or drop off early, so we record everything and the audio and all the visuals are available to you.
Does anyone have any other questions for Meredith?
I'm going to skip to the next slide, so they better speak up. Nope. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me in this very quick tour of gamification. Like I say, everything will be available to you post-recording. And I thank you all so much for listening. I think we've got, oh, thanks, Jeff. Thanks everyone for joining me, and hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
So just a quick question. Just do we know how we can generate a leaderboard?
Oh yeah, why don't I click over this.
Everyone's super keen.
Super keen. You can stay on for the Easter egg at the end. Let me just get my mouse. Okay, so let's have a look at my Totara Learn site. You are seeing it, brilliant. It's tiny, so as an example, here's one I prepared earlier. This is just the activity results block. So if I turn editing on, it is just the activities results block. You can add it just like you would add any other activity type. So, sorry, block type. So you can search for it, or because it begins with A, it's at the top of the list there. And then you simply configure it with which activity you want to pull the results from. So it would need to be something that's graded, like in a quiz or assessment, or in this case, a SCORM activity. You can choose how it looks, and so rather than calling activity results, in that gamification course, we've just renamed it leaderboard. And you can choose whether to have a header or border, and this is where you choose which activity should it display results from. So in this case, I checked skills assessment. You can have how many people are displayed on the list, and you can even have this as group-based as well, and a few other options in terms of decimal places if you've got a highly competitive example like the time trial. So that's the leaderboard activity results block. Anything else?
Another question there. So is graphical representation possible for the leaderboard?
Not at this stage with the block. It doesn't come from the report builder, but you could look at using the report builder to generate some overall results, and using the graph builder within that. Yeah, that would work.
Matthew's asking how have individuals configured visual elements with gamification, like a graphical overlay.
Oh,
it's quite there's certain software you can use, for example, Storyline or authoring tools where you can add graphical overlays, but also H5P is a really easy way to do that. You can have games, little interactions that you can use graphics quite easily, but a more deep approach to graphical overlay.
I'm not sure I'm able to answer that question, I'm afraid. Maybe that's something that we post in the community for a discussion.
Yeah, it's a good question, Matthew, for the community. And if you post that into one of the forums, we can raise that in the next weekly update and try and get lots of responses on it. Okay, does anyone have any other questions for Meredith before we finish for today? Oh, yeah. Eva's asking, I have a question about certificate. Is there a way to import an existing PDF as a base to develop the certificate? Or do I need to build from scratch in Totara?
Well, you could use a PDF, not as a basis for using the certificate module, but you could edit as a file to your course. So let's do it. Something here. So you can add a file to any kind of file to your course, and essentially treat it like a certificate. So we would just add it as a file, and then only have it visible once an individual has completed a particular activity, whether that be the final assessment or maybe achieved a certain grade or a combination of those things. So you could just use that file and just restrict access to it and award it as a certificate. If you wanted to use a certificate activity, then I'm afraid you'd need to break down the elements of that certificate and import them in at that site level, and you do that manually. Hope that answered your question.
Okay, before we go,
one more.
Any more for any more? Cool. Is the organization-wide admin possible to create for multi-tenancy?
Well, multi-tenancy is some functionality that we'll be seeing within the next release of Totara Learn. So there is some multi-tenant functionality available now in terms of using the position and organization. But the update that we'll be releasing soon will provide that user administration level. And that would include creating audiences where you could use it to award badges and restrict content. there is, yet again, another one of my blog posts within the resource area on multi-tenancy. There's one or two features that we've added since that post around some greater restrictions on filtering reports, but otherwise it's still relevant. I can probably dig out the link and send it through, or we can attach it to the post. And that gives you some examples of how you can create that multi-tenanted environment. Organization-wide homepage, login page possible. Yep, you can do that. So you can create any number of dashboards as you like within Totara Learn, and you can assign access to that via the audiences functionality, and you can create dynamic audiences based on an individual's organization.
Okay, so thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for your time and attendance. Look forward to seeing you at the next exciting episode of the product webinar series.
And keep an eye out for the gamification guide that Meredith mentioned before. We're sending that out soon.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, love.